You have today Scott Keogh, who is President and CEO of Volkswagen Group North America. Thanks for joining us, Scott.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and it's always great to be here. It's April, which of course is my birth month, so I have a special affection for that. And of course, I'm in my hometown of New York, so it's always great to be here for the auto show, and a great pleasure to be with all of you. I want to admit one thing absolutely right off the bat. If you're expecting a sort of ham and egg automotive presentation, which is on dealer stock, interest rates, residual values, incentive rates, floor planning expenses, and all of that, that is not what this presentation is going to be. I think sometimes in life you need to have a little bit of a higher calling, and this is going to be a little bit of a higher calling presentation. So with that as background, I think the first thing, what exactly are we as the Volkswagen Group? And I think the first thing as we are, it's the world's largest automaker, and I think you can see it's 12 brands, 10.8 million vehicles delivered in 2018, 44,000 vehicles produced a day. You can imagine the complexity, 122 production sites in 33 countries, selling 365 models in 153 countries around the world, and obviously a little bit of global market share, a little bit of revenue, and obviously a little bit of earnings after tax. So if you can take one word away, it's a decently scaled company. You might want to take away, it's a little bit of a complicated company, without a doubt. I think the second one lets you know what's going on in America. Of course, we have the Volkswagen Group, which is all the brands that collectively operate here. And then, of course, we have the North American region, Mexico, Canada, the United States. Of course, we have two factories, one of them in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which you all know. Of course, we have a large factory in Puebla, Mexico, and an engine plant in Silao, Mexico as well, all feeding the North American region. So that's the background, that's the context. Now to get into my presentation, and I think there's sort of, four chapters, if you will. I think the first one, appropriately titled Mythical Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda. The second one is a little bit about us, and it's the hole in our heart. The little one is the hole in the market, which John mentioned, which of course is electrification, and then a little bit about what our plan is. And I think the best way to open it was an article I read about 3 months ago. It came out, New York Times magazine section. It was an article, basically a very provocative headline, if you remembered. And basically it said 30 years ago, we could have saved the planet. An intentionally provocative headline, obviously, but the argument that they made was sometime in the 1960s through sort of the early 1970s, they had this mythical thing called climate change relatively sorted out. You had the science agreed to, you had politicians on board, both Democrats and Republicans, you had the globe on board, this is all the various factions, all those various countries around the world, relatively there to coming with a universal climate accord. This is before even the more massive industrializations that have taken place, particularly in India and China and places like that, and you had this sort of common platform to address this issue. And the philosophy was pretty clear. It all came down to one number, and that number is 2 degrees. And the reason 2 degrees is important, if you sort of take the industrial age and where it all kicked in, you add 2 degrees, and the world starts to dramatically alter. Rising sea levels, melting ice caps, on and on and on, where the world becomes an extremely different place. Since then, the world has warmed just over 1 degree roughly, and this is why you're hearing all of the alarm bells now ringing with each and every headline you read in each and every day in each and every newspaper. Now, that of course is quite a depressing tale. Buried inside the article was 1 or 2 paragraphs. Of course, you see these headlines. The headlines, of course, from this week alone, Central American farmers heading to the US, unsustainable on Central American farms. Even the military is jumping on board with our mission-critical bases, and of course with Canada. But again, buried inside that article was a couple of paragraphs that looked at something I thought quite fascinating. Now, if you're in my generation, and I think a fair amount of the group is, there was this mythical hole in the ozone layer, and there was not a topic or a headline at that time frame was talking about the hole in the ozone layer, how dramatic this was going to be, what impact this was going to become, what this was going to mean for all of us. And I think the smartest thing about it is when they talked about it, they didn't talk about it in terms of the warming potential from the Earth. They talked about the worry of getting skin cancer. And something pretty powerful happened. Governments got together, marketing campaigns got developed, consumers got together, the manufacturers got together, banned a lot of these things that we know today and took for absolute granted in the 1970s and 1980s. Probably hasn't been a headline in any newspaper in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And if you look at the science, what exactly happened? Hole in Earth's ozone layer finally closing up because humans did something about it. So I think you'll never meet a more optimistic person than me. Yes, I am a cynical New Yorker, but once you scratch that away, I think the human endeavor is capable of achieving an awful lot. I think that's a pretty simple example of what it's capable of when it's properly positioned, digestible, understandable, embraceable, and then industries can respond, consumers can respond, markets can open up, and true transformation can take place. Now, if you look at us as Volkswagen, we talked about the hole in the ozone layer. I think without a doubt, there's a little bit of hole in the heart of Volkswagen with obviously our challenges with TDI and what manifested itself there. So I think we, and I personally, do have a special responsibility. I think the other side of the market is there is a little bit of a hole in the market. John, I think your article was written in 2000, I think I heard you say. That was a little bit a while ago now. And of course, where is this market and where is this market heading? It's 2.2 points of share right now in the US. Is it growing? Is it going to get bigger? Where is it heading? And I think we all look at the opportunity in the earth there. Now for us, I think this is paramount. I think being the world's largest automotive manufacturer with the world's most powerful brands, with access to the world's best technology, with the world's best dealers behind us, I think we do have a special responsibility, and that responsibility is called leadership. When you're the biggest, when you're the largest, when you're the innovator, you have to lead. You have to take a stance, even when there is not absolute clarity. Anybody, any fool can show up at the dance when the world is all crystal clear, laid out, and beautiful. It's difficult to show up when it's not so crystal clear, when there is some fog, when there is some haze, when there is some unknowns. Plunging into the unknown is the magic of business. Yes, that is when things are difficult. That's where we like to be, but certainly we look upon it as our responsibility. We have 185,000 people working and striving on this across the globe, which is quite a magnificent enterprise. Now, I think personally, as many of you in this audience, a few Volkswagen dealers, a few Audi dealers, and a few colleagues along the way, I personally have an extremely long history with this brand. My dad, of course, went to West Point, married my mom. They moved to Germany. They, of course, that is not my mom and dad, that's my grandfather and my aunt. But of course, they fell in love with the Volkswagen, and we had a family of 5. There was 7 of us then, obviously. I was the youngest. And I think if you know Beetles pretty well, the back of the Beetle, which today would be described luxurious as a 3rd row, it was sort of a little hatchback there. That's where I spent my time. Bouncing around, and I always loved to tell the story because when my mom went to work, she'd be coming home, and the absolute knowable clatter of that Volkswagen engine, you could hear my mom coming 2 blocks away. So of course, by the time she pulled in, we stopped fighting, cleaned the place up a little bit. I was always doing my homework. So I feel very, very bad for these kids of the future when the electric Volkswagen shows up, because they're not going to get any warning of when Dad's rolling in. Of course, the other shot is my brother. My dad, of course, like a lot of people, loved Volkswagen. He wanted to send a luxury message. That's the 100 LS, 1971, and that shot, that's about when Audis were introduced. So I feel a profound personal responsibility to get Volkswagen exactly where it belongs after having done an awful lot for Audi on that front. And if you think about it, Volkswagen has and aspires to be the heart of the US car market. And I literally mean the heart. If you think of the vehicle, the Beetle, if you simplify what the Beetle did in America, it opened up mobility for the masses, it put a smile on people's faces, and it absolutely was a cultural icon that still exists 60, 70 years later. The bus speaks for itself. Little did we know, we invented the giant SUV category about 50 years beforehand, but I think that ad says an awful lot. If your family's a crowd, you have 4 choices. And of course, the van and the myth that stands for. This, of course, then moved on to the drivers wanted and everything that came for that campaign. So we do believe we have a responsibility, since we're the world's largest company, we have a responsibility to drive culture and to drive relevancy and to matter in this marketplace. Now, if you look at the numbers, of course, tell a very powerful story. The industry that we in this room are collectively in drive around 14% of CO2 emissions. Since we are the world's largest company, the Volkswagen Group, all brands, all sales worldwide, the mythical 1%. So we create 1% of the global emissions each and every day across the planet and across the globe. So yes, we do have with our scale a defining responsibility to do something about this. And I think, frankly, this sums it up quite clearly. 1969, America, obviously, obsessed with the moon. We're obsessed with the moon as well. And obviously, if you fast forward it now to 2019, when we launch our electric buzz again and the van, we will be and are continue to be obsessed with the planet. So now, the question's going to be, of course I get the philosophy, but where is the market and what's your response to what the market potential is for electrification? And I'll give a point of view on this quite clearly from my front. So if you look at the numbers and the projections, you can see the growth rates are quite good, but of course the suspicious ones in the room say growth rates of a small number. Of course they always look good. It's sort of like my portfolio. The rates are good, but there's nothing in there, so it's not getting too far. So that being said, of course the United States, PHEVs and BEVs growing by about 81%, projected to be approximately 11 million cars in 2040. So that's obviously a massive potential opportunity. You can see the European numbers there for yourselves, and you can see the China number, nearly 16 million cars. So clearly a very large market is opening up. Of course, a large opportunity needs to be pursued. And the question is, do you attack it now, or do you wait to 2039 and say, yeah, let's go get after that 16 million car market? The problem of waiting in our business right then, you lose the scaling effects, you lose the leadership effects, and you lose all of the innovation and all of the magic that needs to happen in order to arrive when that opportunity manifests itself. Now, the other thing, of course, is the range, and I'm sure you've seen everything on this, but frankly, I have a very simple point of view on that front. Technology, particularly American innovation, can meet any challenge. Range is one of those challenges, and frankly, I see that diminishing by the minute. I see the team from Electrify America is here, and if you look at the investments that they're making, plus the investments that the industry is making, I see this being a complete non-factor, particularly when the number one thing is not here, the fact that you have a charging station inside your home each and every day, starting with a full tank. The cost, and I think you've seen these presentations before, but without a doubt, we're nearing the tipping point where an electric drivetrain is going to be cheaper than an ICE. Some say it's going to happen around 23, around 24, but of course, if you can get the scaling effects, you can make that happen even sooner. This is obviously a powerful opportunity, and then you can see what's happening with the cost per kilowatt hour of a battery and how they are declining on that front. Now, the big question is the market ready? And this is the normal ebb and flow that comes with any new technology. Of course, we see electric cars of the future. Are dealers on board or are dealers not on board? Car dealers won't sell if it's electric, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Do people want EVs, but who is there to sell them to us? An electric car's worth the taxpayers' charge. Now, if you look at that, the flip side of the coin is there clearly is no defined industry leader today. Yes, Tesla 100% has a head start, certainly in the luxury market, but again, yes, obviously the average transaction of a Tesla price is quite high. The average household income of a Tesla owner is somewhere around $400,000, so I think that works quite well, as we say, for the millionaires. But clearly, when we talk about this type of scaling effect, you're going to have to hit price points and hit customers that are earning dramatically less than $400,000 a year. So there is a clear opportunity for someone to lead this market on a mainstream level, for someone to lead this on a volume level. And of course, in my opinion, I think it's a fool's game to rely on policy to do it. I hear a lot of arguments to say, well, what's the government going to do? What's going to be the policy? Are you doing this because of policy? And I have a very simple point of view, which I've used before. In the history of the world, and at least in the history of the automotive market, I've never seen a consumer walk into a Volkswagen dealer and says, I love your brand so much, and I am so enamored with everything you do that I am going to buy this car so you can reach your compliance target. That's how I love with your brand. It doesn't happen. And frankly, what consumers buy, cool technology, cool brands, cool cars, hopefully a cool dealer at a great price. That drives a market. Policies, I think if we've changed, particularly over the last couple of years, can swing and change quite dramatically. And we don't want to sit on policy. We want to sit on what the automotive business does well. Cool technology, properly marketed, backed by a great dealer to drive traffic and drive interest. And that is where we are at. And frankly, we see interest building day and night towards electric cars. It's a topic of conversation everywhere. More of them are getting on the road. You're starting to hit that tipping point, and the tipping point, of course, is what makes our industry work. If from consumers' point of view, as I've been tracking the industry, it's gone from, I've never heard of them, I have heard of them, and I don't want one, maybe I'll buy one someday, to my next car, I'll give an electric vehicle a serious look. So this is a dramatic transformation over the last 10 years in terms of electric vehicles. But for me, the big one, as I come down to it, is of course, on the Volkswagen Group side, we are massively scaling for this opportunity. We are sharing this platform across the board, and we are leading. I've laid a clear case. We have a responsibility to lead. We have a desire to lead. And in order to make the business case work, we have to scale to lead without a doubt. We are in the midst of the largest investments ever being made by any company, and you want to talk about the massive corporate structures to make this happen. Nearly $10 billion will be invested in electrification through 2023. 1 million vehicles will be produced that are electric by 2025 across the globe. And of course, as I've looked at this transformation, a lot of people say, I don't see it. It's a dogmatic industry. It's an industry that's not moving forward. It's an industry of entrenched interest. It's an industry that doesn't want to change. You know, I look at a very simple example, such as the state of Tennessee. It's obviously a state we have a long vested relationship with our plant in Chattanooga. You think of a state of where it historically was in terms of its coal production, where it historically was in terms of its business, and you look at it today, and the state is absolutely booming in what I'll call a new tech transformation with factories down there, the electric vehicles that we will down there. This profound transformation is hitting states, it's hitting companies such as ours across the board, and I have no debate, this transformation will hit the dealer body as well, 100%. If there's one thing I know about the dealer body, and it's a very simple thing, obviously they have business interest, but they are capable of moving on a dime to pursue a business interest without a doubt. And when this interest aligns with what they're capable of, I believe 100%, and I'm not just speaking for Volkswagen dealers or for Audi dealers, will become a massive competitive advantage as we move into the era of electrification. So I sort of have two charts that I think lay out the story relatively clear. If you want to look at the automotive business, there's been two industry-wide calls to movement, calls to action, if you will. The first one came a very, very, very long time ago. Obviously, the automotive business was coach builders, hundreds of brands, relatively constrained to the affluent, and the basic mandate was quite clear. Let's move the world. Let's get a product that's appropriately priced, that can be sold anywhere around the globe, be manufactured anywhere around the globe, and move anyone around the world. And if you think of basically the entire 20th century sat on one industry, and this was a profoundly powerful force that has roads and cars from Mongolia to Siberia to small towns in America to creating a middle class in America. Without a doubt, this industry literally moved the world, connected families, connected generations, put people, things, places, commerce in touch that has never happened before. So a pretty powerful thing that the collective industry was able to do. I think its second one, of course, maybe the industry could have moved a little more proactively on that front, but basically this very simple concept of protection. You've moved all these people, but boy, there's an awful lot of chaos on these roads. What are you capable of in terms of protecting the people, the families inside these cars? But if you think of the innovations that take place today, from crude seatbelts all the way now to what's happening with e-brakes, autonomous driving, and all of the sensors, the level of innovation to make the roads and the people in cars safer is profound. This was an industry calling. The entire industry responded to this. I think this is the third calling right now of the entire automotive business. It is extremely rare that you can work in an industry, whether you're a dealer, whether you're someone who makes PowerPoint slides, whether you're an actual engineer, that you can actually make a difference on something that A, is impacting the planet right now, is a global issue without a doubt, and we've never had a better time. The technology is on the table. The consumer interest is on the table. The pricing positioning is on the table. It literally all is sitting right here for the global industry to take a crack at it. And I promise you, this doesn't happen every day. You could be working for some brand, sending out press releases for deodorant. You're not changing the world. You could be selling Captain Crunch and telling people you get more of this, you get more of that. You could be working at a fast food restaurant. This is an industry-wide thing that can have massive impact, and I think it's a responsibility for us to collectively own without a doubt. And for me, frankly, there's three ways to look at this thing, and there's three bets you could take. Certainly, the bet on the far left is perfectly valid. Ain't gonna happen. I'm not buying it. I'm staying here. It's all a waste of time. Nothing's gonna happen. The middle road's not a bad one either. I'm not sure how big this opportunity is. I'm not sure if it's gonna be large, gonna be small, it's gonna be medium, but my company and my brand is gonna participate in it. Like any new innovation, I'm a market guy. I wanna get part of the market, I wanna participate. Or the third wave, which there's a bigger perspective here. Yes, of course there's a market opportunity, but there's also a chance to do something profoundly more powerful than just sell a good. And these are the three perspectives. We at the Volkswagen Group clearly have a point of view. We believe in the market. We also believe in the higher calling and the higher purpose. We're being called to do this in many regards. I don't want someone going back 30, 40 years from now with a headline, and let's use the New York Times Magazine section, "They blew it." The technology was there, the consumers were there, conferences were there, everyone around the world talked about it and chatted about it and looked at it, and they blew it. They didn't do it, they didn't execute it. And I don't want to be that executive. I want to be leading a company that didn't blow it, that actually made it happen. And for me personally, someone who likes to hike around a little bit, this is what I've seen when I've gone around the world. I lived in Bolivia for about a year. I was there in 1996. And of course, you can kind of see what happened. This is an iconic glacier outside of La Paz. It's probably gone as we speak. So this is something profound that's happening there. I, of course, spent a lot of time in Nepal, hiked there as well, and I think you read the headlines, slowly but surely, it's disappearing. And then, of course, just had a chance to hike out in the Seattle area, and again, same exact story. So this is very real. It's also very scary, but I think this same headline should not and could not, if we get together as an industry and come up with a solution that works for us, works for consumers, and can make a big, 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 big difference. So I will get off my philosophical horse and now get down to the brass tacks questions of the automotive business. But thank you for your patience and thank you for listening. I appreciate it.